Hi, firstly, thank you to the festival for having me. It's my first time here. In more than one ways, it's my first time in the city of Trivandrum. Very excited to be here, and it's my first time at a literature fest in general. I had absolutely no idea what to expect, and I was honestly a little bit confused when they reached out to me, and before I started reading about what the artist corner was or why they're even calling me. So next slide. So I thought I'll write a book just so I can fit into this place. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, and so I wrote a book last night actually, and yeah, it's just a stupid joke. But next. But who am I? So I'm guessing nobody knows me, nobody knows what I've done. So I thought I will start by talking about myself as narcissistic artists usually do. Yeah, so my name is Kothawade. I am an artist and a designer. I usually don't talk to people outside of my field. I don't give talks outside, so I don't have to explain what I do in detail. But next slide. People usually refer to me as some sort of a multidisciplinary, award-winning artist, designer person working at the intersection of art and technology, amongst other things, which again I think is quite stupid, and I don't like labels. I only feel boxed by them. But people in the field like to just label you as a certain kind of artist, and I happen to work with a lot of technology. So yeah, she did introduce my topic, which was the evolving role of an artist in the realm of technology and AI. So my presentation was informally called Pixels, Portraits, and Paradoxes, because I really like the name. And maybe you'll see why it's called that. It has a little bit of everything, a little bit of my world, what I do, what keeps me up at night. And I just really like the name, and I might have used ChatGPT to get it. I will not tell. Yeah, so for as long as I remember, I have always been inclined to technology. Some of my earliest, fondest memories have been doing random things on the computer. That is me. No, but I remember when I was really young, we used to move a lot. Like my family, I've lived in Chennai, Delhi, Haryana, Gujarat, Maharashtra. And because I used to live a lot, we used to change schools every couple of years. And I didn't really have as many friends as one usually does when they grow up in one place surrounded by the same people. And so my father gifted me a computer on one of my birthdays, and that kind of became my best friend, because I used to come home from school and just log on to my computer and do random things on it. And for summer vacations, I would come back to Maharashtra to my extended family, and a couple of my uncles used to work in software engineering, and they used to subscribe to these magazines which look ancient right now, but they used to come with these discs which had a bunch of random softwares on it, everything from accounting softwares to music softwares and graphics and whatnot. So they would give these to me because they had no use. I would take them back home and I would load them up and just install the most random things on my computer. I have played around with accounting softwares when I was 9 years old. I didn't know what I was doing. I would just press random numbers and use it as a calculator. Or I would I remember installing one of the earliest versions of Photoshop and just trying to do things with it and failing. We didn't have internet back then, so I would just click random buttons. If it didn't work, I would uninstall it. But anyway, it was a plaything for me. And I feel when I really think back about how my relationship with technology has been, I kind of lead it back to that, of just feeling so much joy and deriving so much satisfaction from just being by myself and this tiny ass fat screen that we used to have. So yeah, you give me a computer and access to the internet now, and I'm a very happy person. I see so many possibilities in it, and I feel it's the reason why I'm here. It's kind of the reason why, you're probably listening to me as well. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. I am a designer, but I didn't always want to do design. I get bored with things very easily. So while I was doing all those random things when I was a child, I think there was a sense of that I really like creation. The joy of creation is what like pulls me to these things. And so as I grew older, I was like, oh, what can I do? And then we were trying to figure out, right? Like there's this point that comes where you have to decide what you have to do in your career. Your parents are like pressurizing you. And I remember specifically in 10th grade, they made me take like one of those aptitude tests, I think they're called, where you have to like check a bunch of boxes and they tell you the profession that you should be doing. And there's like counselors for that. And I did that because I had no clue what I wanted to do. And then that test said you should be an engineer. My father was extremely happy with that because he's an engineer. And me, just to spite my father, took up commerce and was like, nah, not happening. And it was just a pure act of rebellion. I took up commerce, and then my mother said, can you take up like math so you could do architecture maybe that's something you're interested in, and I just went along with that. I studied to pursue architecture for 2 years when I was in my 11th and 12th grade. 1 month before I was supposed to give my architecture entrance exam, I was like, I don't think I want to do that. I used to be fascinated by movies, so I thought I want to get into that industry. And I thought visual design is what I wanted to do. So I went to a design school, not realizing what design school consisted of. The first year of design school was horrible for me because I didn't mention this. I am an artist, yeah, but I cannot draw. And they made us draw a lot, and I was really bad at it. And I also happened to be colorblind, which is not the best scenario when you're like doing graphic design or art, because they would not accept my purple C's, and I would make greens browns and reds greens and whatnot. So I've always relied on technology to kind of bridge that gap, because if there's one thing that I did learn from design school early on is that it starts like in your head, and then you go on to execute things, right? And so once we got the freedom to kind of explore and execute in ways other than like just drawing and like using colors, like I couldn't even like mix two colors together, I went back to what I was most comfortable with, to my computer, to execute these ideas. And it got a little better. It's been almost 8 years now. Next slide. And as she mentioned, I have had the privilege of working with brands that I really like and have got to exhibit around the world. This reference is probably going to be dead here, but someone told me that the list looks like the lyrics to Darde Disco from Om Shanti Om. But anyway, so these are some of my favorite exhibitions. That's from NFT NYC. The art that you see on the back projected in that gallery was my art. I really like that one. This is from Seoul in Korea, where they put my art on this like massive monolith, and people would just walk around, and I think that was one of my favorite displays. And that's my latest favorite one, which was in the Art Science Museum in Singapore, an institution that I really admire, and I think I was really lucky. I was really honored to be a part of one of the exhibitions there. So yeah, we can move on. So it hasn't gone so badly, right? And technology has made a massive difference in my life, and apparently in other people's as well. I remember reading this headline. Next slide. I remember reading this headline a few years back where this man married a hologram that was powered by AI. And it's like one of my core memories of reading this. I was like, oh my God, that's so fascinating. And then next, news came out that his relationship with this hologram had gone kind of cool, and it wasn't going so okay. Next. And then eventually they had to break up because he could no longer communicate with her. And that's somewhat what like relationships with technology look like. They can be all over the place because a lot of times you aren't in control of who's making them, who has agency over them. And of course, there's a very extreme situation where don't get married to your computers, guys. Not yet. But yeah, so naturally I was like, screw AI. AI has, I think we missed, apart from like that very shallow example, AI has also been responsible for being very racist to people, us turning AI into being racist, and what I think is the worst of all, AI like hating on bald people, I think. So yeah, naturally, next slide. I was like, screw AI. That was my first reaction. It's like done nothing good. AI is only like amplifying our negative sides, it's being racist, it's bigoted, whatnot. The slide had like something way more profane, but I was like, I'm going to a literature fest, I should like change it, so I made it screw. But then my friend told me this slide is still very aggressive. So next slide, I made a nicer version of it. So we can all be like, screw AI, and have a smile on our face. But of course, this was all until I read this article from MIT Tech Review, I think it's called. Next slide. Yeah, about an avocado armchair. And this really fascinated me because I was like, for someone who has relied on technology to like make these images, for someone whose bread and butter is images, and now you could like enter a bunch of text and like make chairs, I just went down the rabbit hole of like, oh no, back. Go back, go back, go back, go back. Yeah, so I went down a rabbit hole of like trying and wanting to use AI. So I reached out to OpenAI, who were behind the development of DALL-E, if you know about it, and this avocado armchair. And I was like, hey, this is kind of cool. I do like design and art things. Would you want to let me like use this? And they were very happy to actually let me use one of their like very early alpha programs. And I got to play around with a bunch of things, and it was really bad, actually. Like, these are like cherry-picked examples of like what a good one could look like. That actually looks like poop. But like when I was trying it, it was really bad, and like, but it was kind of fascinating that I could enter a bunch of words, and it would create an image out of nothing, out of like thin air. And I was like, this is kind of cool, but it's really bad. But I went to sleep, I blinked metaphorically. Next slide, Mid-Journey came out, I refreshed my Instagram, and it was filled with AI-generated art. People were making all sorts of things, some very questionable things, and I don't know, I don't know what's going on here. But it was just everywhere. I was so overwhelmed when I looked at this because I think this was like in a span of 1 month that people got access to the technology and just, I would just say, like, started exploiting it because there's some very horrific things here, like very super sexualized, like content, or as someone has described, like AI generation or generation of images in AI, they said that you have the ability to remix the world's creativity with your conscience. And that's such like a deep, profound thing that I heard. And then people use it to like make Obama or Elon Musk dance at our sangeets. But anyway, I will never understand that. Next slide. So yeah, there was so much content that was being created and consumed and created. It got me thinking about how essentially technology has allowed us to just do everything everywhere all at once. The internet allowed us to be anywhere we wanted, know anything we desired. Social media let us gauge into anyone's lives. And now AI was letting us create things that were rendered just unimaginable in the past. So exploring this excess and access of our times. Next slide. Another book I wrote. Next slide. Yeah, I created this piece called Enhance. It is a reference to this Blade Runner scene, actually. One of my favorite movies. We can like play the video. Yeah, it is a reference to this Blade Runner scene. One of my favorite movies, one of the biggest influences I've had when I create like sci-fi inspired artwork. It's where the protagonist, Harrison Ford, is sitting in front of a computer and he's looking into some footage. It's very early on in the movie, and he keeps asking the computer to enhance into that video footage. And the footage kind of reveals details that sends Harrison Ford down this existential journey and this world that breathes technology. It made him question his humanity. It made him question if he's human enough, if he's even human at all. And I thought that was like a fascinating kind of bit of information. I wanted to use that, right? So I created this piece called Enhance to kind of make sense of the overwhelming nature of what this new technology was offering. This artwork takes you through the many universes of an artist's mind, my mind, as he attempts to catch up to the overwhelming amount of things in front of him that morph into one another, trying to make sense of the contrasting anxieties that these tools provide, attempting to express and create in the little gaps, using their influence, and negotiating with technology that stands with or against them. Technology that Next. Technology that enhances our worldview, but makes us feel smaller and smaller. And I found myself in this like weird space, right? Like I could literally create anything out of scratch, but what did I really want to make? What like was the point of all of this? And this still like it's one of my favorite artworks, but it still felt a little distant to me. It's about like my influences, about what I was consuming. And so I thought I should go back to my roots. I should do what any artist would. Next slide. Oh, next. Already spoke about this. Next. 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 Yeah. I did what any, again, extremely narcissistic artist would do. I chose to do a self-portrait. Also, I thought that it would be interesting to kind of do a self-portrait using AI, something that we have no control over, but also something so personal, something that is me. I had learned enough about the technology to kind of maybe chase this weird goal that I'd set for myself. I trained some AI models with the likeness of my face. I fed it my photographs, and I asked the AI to generate me in various different scenarios. I would tweak like little things, and I would just like go like generate, generate, generate. What you see is like maybe 1/100th of the images that I generated during this process. I generated thousands of them. I found it fascinating. I loved looking at how the AI looked at me, which was kind of a weird space to be in. But yeah, some results, next slide. Some results were very fascinating, and some, they still show up in my nightmares every now and then. The stubbornness that AI showed to sexualize me every chance it got is very concerning. And yeah, once you look at these, you cannot sleep well at night, and I thought I should extend that pleasure to everybody else when they meet me. Yeah, and I kept generating, right? And I remember in the midst of all of this, we can go next. I created the piece, it's called Consume. We can play it while I talk. I remember in the midst of all of this, while generating these thousands of images, I generated a portrait that was so good that I thought like looked exactly like me, and the AI had done such a brilliant job with it. I was so excited. I sent it to a peer of mine, and I was like, look, I finally like, I'm so close to, I don't know, perfecting this like weird alien technology in front of me. And my friend responded to me saying, Ninad, that doesn't look anything like you. What are you talking about? And in that moment, like, it just like fueled me with so much anxiety, because I realized that I have been looking at the screen, and I've been looking at these generations way more than I've looked at the mirror in the last fucking 15 days. Apologies. Yeah, but it did fill me with so much anxiety, because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with this. The lines between me and the generations were blurred. I did not know where the tech took over and where I surrendered control. How much of what I was creating was me, and how much of what was being created was the computer, was the AI, right? I had lost myself in the process. Next. So these two pieces essentially were all my feelings during this time when I encountered AI, when I wanted to work with it, and this whole journey. And I really need to breathe, and also I want you to watch these two pieces and how they interact with each other. It's really the relationship between the artist and the art, the influences, and how it's kind of a back and forth, and I think they work beautifully together. And it has some music, so we can play that. So you see how it gets to this point of like almost like abstraction, where nothing makes sense anymore. I'm no longer there. What we are seeing is just like the entire universe maybe. And it loops back with a completely different set of images. These two artworks are made of 1,800 images each that are stitched together. It took me just a massive amount of time to do this, but also just a lot of like mental exhaustion looking at myself. Yeah. So if you notice how they affect one another, like it's basically like I'm changing as I look at things in front of me, and then maybe I'm trying to change what I see in front of me, and I kind of gain a little bit of control back, but then I lose myself, and then kind of goes back to like it just being my face again. Next slide. So yeah, if you see like, different stages of it till it's at, I'm just like a metal scrap at the end of it, like that looks nothing like me, that kind of somewhat looks like me, and again, just some abstraction that is in front of me, right? It was exactly what I felt working with AI, that it like abstracted me to a point where I was no longer recognizable to myself. I was finding it very difficult to define these boundaries of my art, of my creations, of the AI, right? Next slide. I came across this quote, and it spoke about how if we spend too much time in developing AI and not humans, it will end up serving our stupidity and nothing else. That's what I thought was happening with me. I was being consumed. I couldn't define my intent. I couldn't define my role in this whole thing. The lines between excitement and anxiety kept blurring. Next slide. Yeah, they just kept blurring, and I figured that, next slide, that I will have to rearrange this. I will have to insert myself at every step of the way for it to feel like my work, for it to feel like any of this makes even like the slightest of sense. I'll have to insert myself in each and every part of it. So creating this work and experiencing the process of it obviously raised way more questions than I had initially anticipated, like this one here. When the skill of a machine becomes indistinguishable from the skill of a master craftsman, does it lead to devaluing of the craft itself? When the AI can create the best of the artworks, does it mean that art just isn't, hold as much value as it would if technology couldn't replicate it? I don't know. So, yeah, it made me question if the work I was creating was of any value, or was I just chasing this mirage of ideas in this pointless loop and other existential things. That's my next book. Next. So 36 Days of Type came along. For those who don't know, like it's this challenge that comes every year. A lot of artists and designers participate in it. The challenge is that like they take like 1 month of the year, and every day you have to create a letter. So you will draw A today, you will draw B tomorrow, C the day after, and so on and so forth. I've done like 3 of them before, and I've always taken them up as challenges to like learn a new software. So you know how I was talking about, like I wanted to do something, then I wanted to do architecture, then design, and this and that. And it didn't stop there. I did my specialization in visual design, but my thesis had maybe 10% graphic design, and I did an installation which relied on other senses because I got bored of it. Then I came out, I started doing packaging with an agency, and I got bored of that, so I started doing animation and motion graphics, and then I got bored of that, so I started doing 3D and sculpting, and then now I arrived at AI, right? So when 36 Days of Type came along, I thought I will challenge myself to go further down this path, right? Push myself into this AI rabbit hole a little more, insert myself at every point of the process, and fight for agency in this whole thing. I pulled out all these tricks from my hat. Starting from animating in 3D, I started by drawing the letters, then I took it to 3D, like kind of sculpted it, animated it, and then I thought that I will let AI kind of generate and iterate along with it, constantly going back and forth, and I kind of made it my full-time job to make this series. I was very obsessed. I really wanted to make sure that it is consistent, it is interesting, and it is good. Yeah, we'll just stay at this slide. I had just watched, oh no, back. Okay, that's fine. I had just watched The Last of Us, which is essentially a zombie show, a zombie game, and we've kind of overdone that. But what I liked, like, I was looking at these zombies, right, and the concept of why these zombies were created wasn't some random virus. It was like these cordyceps, these parasites that took over human nervous systems and made like human bodies work for them. And I was kind of thinking about this, and I was like, that's kind of how I feel with AI, that it's taking over my system and it's making me work for it rather than me. And I thought that I will take these concepts of these cordyceps, these very organic looking things, and juxtapose it with obviously something that is made up like our letters, and using it to make like commentary about AI and our role in the whole thing, right? Next. So yeah, between the effortless natural elements that were these mushrooms, these very coral-looking things, and the painstakingly trained artificial intelligence, because every time you have to kind of work with a new style, you have to go back and train models, find images, make images, and it's just very painstaking. I just stood trying to prove a point of human creativity. I stood trying to prove a point that this is still my work, this is still something that I do. It's still like it's me, right? Like it's not AI as much as it's me. And the idea of like just letting go of some control and allowing a machine to iterate may seem very inorganic and unnatural, but it also allowed me, next slide, but it also allowed me to tap into different kinds of creativities that were beyond my own personal biases and limitations. It made me a better listener and observer. I would come and like, I was going insane. I was talking to ChatGPT about these things. And, I remember this one time, like we were talking about something and like, I was just like, oh my God, that's such a great like concept and I really want to explore this. And I don't know, maybe I was like being really sweet to ChatGPT and I said something and then it replied, I don't think you can read it, but it says, as an AI language model, I don't have the ability to see you in the way humans do. And it was so strange because it was still the most seen I had felt in that whole week. But, it finally felt like a collaboration. I was learning with it. Doing this every day presented unique challenges and questions, but it felt more human. Next. Another Blade Runner reference, but just like Rachel's memories, she acutely aware of her existence as a robot, as a machine, oscillating between feeling human yet knowing that you're not one. I questioned whether all human consciousness was just fabricated versions of our experiences. Will nothing be authentic? Will everything I create, I mean, it has to be influenced from somewhere. I see things every day now more than ever. How can I say anything's me, right? And that kind of extended in like a very amplified way to artificial intelligence. Next. And I thought if the involvement of an unbiased digital consciousness actually help us bridge that gap, or would it increase it further? The fact that I had access to so many perspectives, that I could ask the AI, like you've come here at the festival, you're gonna meet like a lot of people from everywhere. The same way I could access AI and ask for perspectives. It essentially has the data of like whatever it's fed, right? So will that access kind of make me a better person, make me a better listener, observer, or does it increase the gap further? Because it also takes negativities of it. As we saw before, that it can be racist if we want it to be, it can be bigoted if it want it to be. And how do we use it? How do we go about it? Yeah, next. So, while I was able to achieve what I wanted to, consistency, agency, and a series which I'm extremely proud of, exactly like my last project, I ended this one with more questions than ever, even lesser answers this time. But what I realized was that it was the curiosity that kept me going. It was the curiosity that kept me going. This technology is so new, it's so rapidly evolving that it is impossible to know these things. Nobody knows where it's going. Nobody knows what the right things to do or say are. We barely know how it works. Like you'll see, if you like look up how these things work, a lot of it is described as a black box because we kind of know how the systems work, but sometimes it does change things that we have no idea about. So, yeah, again, ending with like way more questions, not knowing what is happening. I kind of ended in a place where I was like, at least I know what the importance of us is in this whole process. I don't know what the AI means, what the technology is doing, but I know where I stand. Going forward, we can, next slide. Oops, next. Screw AI. Yeah. Going forward, obviously, we can reject it and say screw AI, or be extremely optimistic and open our arms to it. But these extremes are very unproductive. When I think about the future, when I think about the stuff that we're actually creating for, something that all of us are a part of, I think of creators at the center of it all. I think of artists, I think of designers, writers, anybody that's working in a field like ours, right? Who's developing to make a world that we want to live in. Next. I figure that it is our responsibility as creatives to make it work for us. To constantly challenge it, to fight biases that comes with it, and to constantly ask it questions. Because without it, it's just this empty thing that is going to continue being racist, is going to continue have all the bad qualities that people before us had. Like when we think of our ancestors, sure, they might have done some good things, but they were also kind of like bad people according to today's standards. Like the systems that we're constantly trying to break today, that we're rebelling against today, they were created by them, and maybe they served some point back then, but they no longer do. And the sad fact is that like the AI that we are working with is trained on the data that came before us. It's trained on the data that is available to them. And so like we see a lot of Western biases, the way that the West looks at India, the way that the colonizers have kind of left us. And every one of these things reflects when we work with AI and is only amplified. And so it is our job to kind of take back that agency and like train our own data, tell it to like, challenge these things, write about these things, put it out, like take back control. And I think a lot of people are doing that. I'm trying to do that. And it's the only way that we can make it represent us. It is our job to push it. Only then it will feel like a collaborator and not an employer. The AI can evolve to be as amazing and creative as the best people on earth, but it will always lack vision. It does not work with intent as humans do. It doesn't have the capabilities to ask questions, and it definitely doesn't have the drive to work towards a better world, to a world that we want to live in. Next. So thank you. I thought I will end it with a lot more of my face so you never forget it. Thank you.
Now we open the floor for questions. Does anybody have a question?
Nilad, what a wonderful surrealistic psychedelic experience to listen to you. My question is, are you virtual Nilad or the real Nilad? You are a digital double?
We'll never know, I guess. I say this a lot of times. I was like, this entire talk that I gave, was it written by AI or did I sit and write it? I can't tell you.
But you said, it is not AI, it is I. You.
Yeah, it is me at the end of it.
Excellent.
But maybe it stands for artificial.
Okay. I'm asking you about, are you in a parallel universe of psychedelic experience, like you said like that? Your mind is full of parallel universes. It is just like the quantum computing or quantum consciousness, which from where we gather quantum serendipities. It is a very full packed with the quantum serendipity. All kudos to you.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful psychedelic surrealistic experience. So please explain. Recently I saw a video on Salvador Dali in Metaverse. Meta-universe. Metaverse. Could you elaborate something on Metaverse?
On Metaverse, I'm not sure. Also, like, thank you so much. That was really sweet of you, even if I absolutely do not understand like anything that has the word quantum in it. But yeah, I'm just trying to like do what like invokes my curiosity and go down those paths, right? Like something that kind of directly affects me and the world that I live in. About metaverses, I don't know. It's a fascinating concept. I don't think we're there yet to like be living in parallel worlds. I care too much about our world and like the life that I live and the systems that I work in, to do more about it than trying to escape it. Like, I like to think that none of my work is escapism. None of my work is kind of a distraction from the things that affect me or like the things that I want to work towards. And, yeah, I don't really have like very strong opinions about metaverses or anything. Oh, another question. Oh, sorry, please.
Hello. Yeah, congratulations for your presentation. And I want you to define what exactly is unbiased digital consciousness.
So it's an idea, right? Like basically, if you think about like these generative AIs, the way that they work is that we feed them a lot of data, and we kind of explain how like machine learning works, which is like, oh, this is the data, you kind of derive meaning from it, and then if somebody asks you a question, you can kind of use it to answer. Unlike search engines where like it will directly connect words and stuff, it can actually, it has the ability to make correlations and things like that. It can derive from this like massive size of data. So when I say unbiased, it's kind of an idealistic thing where I feel like if enough data is fed into it, because a lot of times like data is super interesting to me. There's this book I would recommend called Everybody Lies, but it's about like how if we talk to people, we get one version of them, and if you look at data, it's a completely different version, because a lot of people in private are maybe bad people, are like, going through things, and so they look up things that you might not like hear them talk about. And so I feel like if you take all this data that exists and kind of train models with it, we might get a better reflection of humanity and what's going on in like the larger human consciousness than we do in like when we talk to them. So that's kind of the idea of an unbiased.
And one more thing, in the era of, the lot of debate is happening between technology and humanity. So what is the message that you can give to the youngsters, budding youngsters, the technocrats?
So for me, it's like, as I was talking about it, like being on any extreme side of it really doesn't help. It's very unproductive. I am cautiously optimistic about technology because I grew up with it, as you saw. But I've also been really scared of it. It's threatened my existence. It's threatened my bread and butter. But at the same time, I feel like maybe we don't have control over it. What we do have control over is how it works for us, right? So for me, it's that, like, be somewhere in the middle. You can be on either side, maybe not right in the middle, but like, you can be cautiously optimistic, or you can be as pessimistic as you want, but don't look away, because it will affect you. It is affecting people around us. And so, yeah, just be mindful is what like I tell people.
Hi. So my question is actually got to do with the last thing that you said about being optimistic. I work as a copywriter, and I get a lot of clients who just say, "Oh, Rose, if you don't have a good idea, maybe you can just ask ChatGPT." So I am on the more apprehensive, angry extreme of my attitude towards AI. But I understand that it can be a useful tool. So I'm obviously someone who wants to learn to make it work for me, or at least work with me. So how do I approach this? Like, what keeps you optimistic? Like, what are some things you keep in mind to feel a little better about technology?
Sorry, what? Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed the last part. I got a little...
Yeah, no, so I was just asking, what do you do to stay optimistic about AI? Like, what do you think?
I mean, honestly, like, it's very easy for me to stand here and be like, I'm so optimistic, but like, I experience a lot of anxiety because of it. Like, that little excitement that it gets that I can do anything in the world. Like I said, like, I was joking about it. I was like, I wrote a book last night, but it's essentially like, if you really wanted to, you could with ChatGPT. It's not going to be a great book. It's not going to be a mediocre book. It's going to be a horrible one, but you could. And I feel like, that's excitement, that it's going to get better maybe. And you could write 10 books in like 1 week. You shouldn't, but you could, right? So that's like a little excitement that I have, but it's also anxiety at the same time, because like I can write 10 books. That's kind of, then we'll have so many books that mean nothing. But then, do we not write now? Do people not write bad books? Do people not have bad ideas and like put it down and put it out? We still do. And I feel like it's just like a weird reflection of that. And clients are always going to look at like the most efficient, quickest, cheapest way. A lot of times they come to me and they're like, oh, you work with AI, can you give this to me maybe in like the next 1 hour? But the fact is that all of this work that you saw, it's like maybe like 10 pieces. It took me like 2 years to make them. It's because you still have to like, put in that much effort, or, it's not about effort. I don't think art's about effort. It's about like, it's about the intent. It's about like what you want from it, what you're getting from it, right? You can ask ChatGPT to like give you like 10 different ideas and options to brainstorm. It's a brilliant collaborator that way, that if you have an idea and you don't know if, you're making any sense, in the middle of the night, it's available to you. At 3 a.m., I'm like, hey, like, am I making sense or am I going crazy? And, you can use it that way. And I feel like if we continue to do that, maybe it'll get better at doing that rather than like replacing us. And honestly, like clients will understand that with time as well. Like before ChatGPT also, there were worse versions of this available, and we still needed humans. When everything in the world looks like it was generated by ChatGPT, I go on my Instagram, every caption looks like it was written by an AI. The ones that weren't, or the ones that took like a step ahead of it, stand out. And I feel like that's where we create value as individuals in this world. And we'll just have to work a little harder, I guess, which is...
It was a very wonderful session. Thank you for that. And it was exciting also to know about all this, because I think none of us over here, everybody knows about what your actual work is, like what actually your work is, the effort it takes and all. I had 2 questions. The first is, have the introduction of this ChatGPT or artificial intelligence into the work of literature, art, whatever it is, has it brought about a change in our aesthetic sense? It is about perfection. Work is about perfection. My son draws, and I don't draw, but when my son has a work of art and he says, oh, this is not well, I want to discard it, or I want to throw it away, I say, as a mother, I am inclined to say, oh, this is good. I don't do that every time, but still, I say, no, we'll keep it anyhow, because it is your effort. So you have taken much time into that, so we'll keep it. You don't have to put it in your shelf, or we don't have to frame it, but we'll keep it. But he doesn't intend to. He says that it has got to be more perfect. What is your sense of like, what is your take on that? Has artificial intelligence or indulging into the technology has brought it easier to create a perfect image, or has it affected our sense of perception regarding aesthetics or perfection? Or is it the same? Aesthetics and perfection. I'm confused.
No, I really like that question, because I think about that a lot. Firstly, like, I think your son's a true artist if he like hates everything that he makes. That's what an artist does. They hate everything that they make until, it's like, I can maybe look at this and not throw up, and then they put it out. But, it's also important when everything looks perfect in the world, we look for things that aren't so perfect. If you look at like art in general, we went from creating photorealistic paintings to now, something that doesn't look so photorealistic. And I feel like that's what it is. It needs to feel whatever is authentic to them, whatever is authentic to our times, rather than it being perfect. And I feel like, of course, AI kind of amplifies these ideas. Of course, not just AI, the internet and social media, because we suddenly can look at all the art over the world all at once. Like when I was a child, I didn't look at what like the other kids were doing, except for the 5 kids with snot running down their face doing, right? And now I'm like, oh my God, the best child artist in the world is like at the axis of my fingertips. But I feel like it increases comparisons and this and that. But, at the same time, there's this thing that someone once told me that has stayed with me, which was, like, why draw like someone else when no one draws like you? And I really like that line, because it makes me feel like, even though it's not perfect, it's still like something that I have made. And with AI also, I love when AI does weird things. I don't want it to be perfect. I like that it doesn't look like me, but it kind of resembles me in this like weird nightmarish way, right? And that's what I feel like. Like, I like to embrace these artifacts. I like to embrace these imperfections, because if you saw a perfect version of me, then it wouldn't be so exciting, I guess. It's nice to see that, oh my, why do I have like blue eyes? I don't, but right? So it's like, yeah, I guess. I hope that was a satisfactory answer.
I have one more question. What should the budding designers focus on? Like the traditional drawing, is it going to survive? What is your take on that? The pen, pencil, and paper kind, or are they to focus more on the technology? Is it so that their future lies there? Or somebody who doesn't know technology won't survive in an artistic sense of designing that world?
Not at all. I think like I do digital art and stuff because I can't draw. Like, I've tried, and I mean, it's not like I can't draw, but it's like I'm kind of not so good at it, and there are other people who are. I am good at technology. I know other people are not so good at like, adopting it. And I feel like it just makes us think about what we want to do as individuals. Like I will always push for a world where individuals can take decisions, that we don't put them onto a path of like, if someone's drawing, I will not make them sit on a computer. If someone's on a computer, I will not make them. Like you'll hear people saying that computers are bad for children, you should keep them away from screens. But am I not glad that my father got me a computer when I was really young? Because I wouldn't be here otherwise, right? People use it for like disgusting things, but like they also use it for nice things. And I feel like it's a tool, it's a medium at the end of it. Will it be tougher in like the commercial industry? It is getting tougher, I'm not going to lie. Like if you look at, I would recommend like looking at how stop motion has evolved over the years as a form of animation. We still do stop motion and it's painstakingly like difficult to do it. But those who want that aesthetic, those who want to like use that medium to tell certain stories, we still go to them and we still use like miniatures, we still use like this painstaking medium of stop motion. And those people who enjoy doing it still do it. But do we use it for everything? No, because there are easier ways to achieve things to tell stories that don't necessarily need this specific medium. So a lot of things become niches, but I don't think anything's going away. Like, if anything, if we see a world full of digital art and like AI art, we will value handmade arts more. We will value things done by hand more. I think that's what's going to happen. I envy people who can make things with hands because I can't. Thank you.
Hello, Kurian here. So I had a few questions. Like I think last few days back, like the DALL-E's prompt was released, and it was explicitly saying like, don't, even if certain copyright is being used, like others' copyright is being used, don't mention it. Maybe they might have used it for training. So what do you think? Like, okay, this image generators being using copyrighted contents.
So the ethical side of like art and how it's trained is something that is the discussion that I don't involve myself in so much, because one, I have not had control over it, and two, people aren't talking about it in a way where they're more transparent. So if you see like most of my work, I train my own models, because I have been making art before AI came in. I have the ability to do that, which is why I also think like I don't want to sound pompous, but like I do think that my work stands out because of that, right? Like if you see like the things that people put on Midjourney, everybody can do it. I encourage you all to go home and like use an image generator and create whatever you've had in your mind for like, the previous few years. But the fact is that like, I don't think it's valuable enough when, we don't put ourselves in, right? So what these corporates are doing, it's a fight that we've been fighting with technology for years now. The way that social media is using our data, the way that advertisers are using it, and now image generators are using it, literally ripping off artists. Am I for it? Not at all. I do not like it. I don't think it should be done. Yeah, but at the same time, I think completely rejecting it because someone did it and not looking at like how this thing works. Because I know like artists can actually use it for themselves in a better way than, it's like the top 3 questions that I get whenever I put my work out, right? It's like, oh, what kind of art is this? Or like, what kind of a designer are you? What's your skincare routine? And is this AI? So
got it. So you mentioned that now you are not using any of these proprietary tools like DALL-E or something like that. So what are the tools you are actually using? And maybe as an artist, maybe you can tell some advice to budding artists or something like that. Maybe you can use these AI tools so and so way so that like we can be more valuable. Do you have any suggestions that way?
See, these tools are already out there. I'm not saying like I am not for boycotting them or anything. I will say if it's there, if like everybody is using it, use it. I still sometimes do use like DALL-E and Midjourney because I like the aesthetics that it gives me for an idea. Is any of this work created from there? No. It's created, so I use Stable Diffusion, which is open source. Is it ethical? Not really. A lot of the data is trained on pictures that they didn't have copyrights over. But it lets me train my own models. It lets me like create a bypass and add my own data, and so I do that. And like, I don't want to get into a technical discussion, but it's like, read about it yourself. Look into it. Have an opinion about it yourself. If you think it's unethical, don't do it. If you think, it's in a gray area, it excites you, try it out. Just don't completely reject it. Don't completely accept it.
So here I heard that you are training your model. So there, my question is, how do you manage with the unbiased data? Practically, it is very difficult to get unbiased data. And how can we train it, and also how can we get it, first of all? And also how you manage with hallucinating the model. And that is what we see nowadays.
Thank you for the question. Firstly, thank you for calling my face a visual treat. That's very nice. No, but like, so how do we go about it is that the unbiased thing is not like when I use like my data and work in isolation. That is more so on like the global level. An ideal situation is that people give permission to use their works. We create a model based on like hundreds and thousands of billions of images. And so we have like, so I can't get a specific thing. Right now the thing is it's still very limited, so I can be like in the style of like a living artist, A or B or C, and we'll get something that looks like their art, which is just not it, right? But at the same time, like, people don't own styles. Like, we've had art movements over the years, and they all used to like follow the same style of painting and everything. People that came after that used to do that. But does it work for you? I feel like we will focus more on ideas, we'll focus more on concepts, we'll focus more on what we want to say rather than how we do things as we go ahead, which is already happening. Like, for me, that's the main concern, right? And second, how do we go about it? Like, there's tens and millions of things on the internet that you can like look up how to train your own models. It is very system heavy. You need like, a lot of computing power to do a lot of these things, which is why also there's a lack of it. The fact that we come from not a first world country where we don't have access to like this computational power or this data, it's not very documented. Like, a lot of documentation that we have is very colonial, is very like, history written by other people. And so we have to dig these things up. We have to start working towards it, at least in whatever way we can, right? If I'm doing it at home, I only have the power to like do like a little bit of it. But it's the idea that matters. So if you tomorrow come across like, somebody that wants to make AI or somebody that wants to like kind of create something in this domain, you can have an opinion about it. You can be like, can we try to do this? I have archival photos. There's this like rich history and culture that my city has, that my family has. Is there any way to integrate those things, right? And I feel like these are all ideas. As I said, like, I have no answers, only questions. And I encourage everyone to just have way more questions. I hope that my talk also raises more questions in your head, and you take home, curiosity as we go. Yeah.
I have a question. Just wanted to know, you told us that you were colorblind. So being a person who's colorblind, how has that changed your view of art and design? And do you think that AI will be ever able to create something that your unique eyes could recreate?
Yeah, why not? Like, I think with technology, like the way that I look at it is that anything could happen, anything is possible in the future. How do I look at AI and design? Art and design. I don't know any other way to look at it. I have always looked at everything with my own eyes. I honestly don't know how a person who's not colorblind sees the world, how they see colors. I only am made aware of it when other people tell me. When I send something to the client and they're like, oh, we asked for purple, why have you made it blue? Is when I realize I wasn't looking at the same thing as they are. And I feel like in some way, I like to think that whatever I create is then accessible enough for more people that look at things like I do. It's also very like scientific thing that nobody looks at like, one object or one color in the same way as any other person in the world. It's a little bit different, right? For me, it's maybe a little more different. And I feel like if I'm making work that appeals to me, because at the end of the day, why do we use colors? To invoke emotions, to kind of convey certain things. And I like to think that I make it more accessible in that way. And of course, technology helps me bridge that gap, because maybe someday there is technology that lets us see the world in a singular way, It wouldn't be so fun. It might be like really boring, and it might not like be as interesting, but it might let us do that, and maybe there's some value and benefit to it. We'll only know when it comes by.
I am scared and generative AI because of the fact that last week a Japanese woman writer got a prize, literary prize, but the jury found out that she was plagiarizing ChatGPT. Because we legacy ghostwriters are scared. Because whether the ChatGPT will overtake us, because we are genuine writers, and somebody plagiarizing ChatGPT and making a novel wins a Nobel Prize or a Pulitzer Prize, we are scared.
I mean, that's fair. Like, it's fair to be scared. Sorry, you were saying.
But we are in a dilemma, like a digital dilemma, or a writer's dilemma, that whether what we write will fetch a prize like Pulitzer, or whether the ChatGPT-driven novel will get it.
I mean, I honestly don't know, right? Like, my whole talk was titled Pixels, Portraits, and Paradoxes because I live in these paradoxes. I think wherever AI inserts itself, it brings dilemmas, it brings fear, and it's a fair, fear to have. I think it is doing that. It might, as I said, it might write as the best artist in the world, but it will still lack intent, it will still lack your purpose, right? And I don't know who's awarding these books, and the fact that you got to know about this and that they didn't catch it before. We are in a scary kind of place, and I don't know where we go from here, but I do know that we will not surrender to technology because we have created it. At the end of the day, we created it to make it work for us. Nobody's gonna read a book written by AI unless it has something very unique to say that a normal human hasn't before.
Hi, name is Umesh. A long time back we see, Jurassic Park movies. Then, nowadays we see, complete animated movies. So, as you said, the evolving role of the artist, in the down years, we'll see a complete AI-driven movie with, all those, sorry, I think I should move here. So, a complete AI-driven movie, which is, not science fiction. We have science fiction movies like animation movies. Now, other, program called AI movies, Do you see that happening or something like that to happen?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's happening now already. There are AI film festivals that are happening. There's one happening in Dubai in a couple of months. And it's movies that are made entirely or partly using AI. And again, I think the film festival looks at these films with a little bit of nuance where they see why AI is being used. Because I still feel like we're still far from a place where you can make a movie that looks and feels as good as a movie that you've put so much effort, time, where hundreds of people work, right? But as a concept, it's already happening. And I feel like it will kind of, as I said, how does a movie come into place? There's 100 artists that work on it, writers, directors, producers, actors, right? And how much of this is going to be replaced or amplified by AI? I don't know. As a concept, it's happening already, right? But will it be as good? Again, I don't know. Animation has evolved over the years. We're no longer drawing every animated film as we used to. There are still hand-drawn animated movies, and I think I like watching a lot of them because they retain a certain charm that 3D generated animated movies sometimes don't. So mediums become niches. Our roles keep changing is what my talk was all about, right? We used to work in factories. Machines came over and started doing that work, but we started running those machines.